Welcome, Wargamers, to the muck and the mire of the mortal realms, because today we are talking about the Rotmire Creed. This is one of the newest warbands to grace the wilds of Ghur in the newest edition of Warcry, and that is, when you buy the Heart of Ghur Warcry set, one of the two warbands is the Rotmire Creed. And their story, or what brought them to this place, is certainly an interesting one. And honestly, the reason I like it is it's a similar tale to thousands of tribes and peoples that fell to chaos in the late Age of Myth and early Age of Chaos, and basically how things fall apart in such a way as you get evil factions. And when I say that, what I mean is they're awesome specifically because it's a snapshot of the fall of so many others. It's a great representation. Now, one thing I'd like to add right up top, if you like this video and if you're interested in Warcry whatsoever, please consider using the affiliate link in my descriptions below. Not Just Gaming is an awesome store here in the US on the East Coast with 15% off all GW products, and using that link goes an immensely long way to supporting me, my wife, this channel. It's life-changing stuff and I deeply appreciate it. To put it in perspective, one purchase from them is worth, generally speaking to me, about 3,000 views. Now, for those of you who are new to Warcry and the faction, meaning the overall, warrior tribes that make up Warcry, this latest edition of Warcry is a soft update to the game that moves the location of the overall story from the 8 points, which is sort of a hub of chaos, to Ghur, the realm of beasts. In fact, it's actually not that far from the overall events of the Age of Sigmar setting, which Warcry is a part of. It's actually kind of like roughly dead west of Excelsius, which is a major city and one that shows up predominantly on a lot of maps. I did a dedicated video talking about the Gnarlwood, the actual overall setting, and I'll link to that in the description down below. But in Ghur, it's a land rife with all different kinds of environments. You have deserts and ice peak mountains and lush forests of gnarlwoods, and even some very, very nasty swampland. In particular, to the far north of the Gnarlwood, kind of on its northern edge or border, is a swampland known as the Rotmire. And this is not too far away, as I mentioned, in the grand scheme of things, from Excelsius. But let's not get ahead of the story. I just kind of wanted to lay out some rough, approximations of groundwork as to where we're talking about. So the story of the Rotmire Creed. Several generations ago in the city of Excelsius, we aren't given a date outside of that, but we know it's in the Age of Sigmar, so more recent history. There was a large group of alchemists and physicians who were dedicated to stopping disease, like in very intense research on cures for numerous kinds of maladies. Think of it like a large scientific/arcane institution built to combat the day-to-day plagues of city life, but also have some kind of answer or research into a weapon to fight back the power of Nurgle. Again, a constant threat to every single society of order. This group of alchemists, they keep saying alchemists, but this group wanted what's called the Filter of Immortality, a way to combat everything from disease to wounds to even age. Essentially a super cure to disease and entropy, which are both, Nurgle's jam. And so Nurgle looks down on this, and he gets rightfully upset. All the gods get upset whenever you try to defy whatever their defining aspects are, and begins to set in motion a series of events that would undo this team of alchemists. In the pursuit of research, their minds, at least the minds in this particular group, began to grow really, really dark. And it went from testing things in a very upright, outstanding way that benefited people, to grabbing victims in the night and testing on people and using them as guinea pigs and treating them like animals. You could go get some prisoners or just abduct people off the street and use them as guinea pigs. And of course, in the testing of a cure for a disease requires a bunch of these people either have or be given terrible afflictions. Now, presumably, this escalated rather quickly. We're not given a ton of details on this time, but it got real dark real fast. And throughout this entire time, I'm sure Nurgle was whispering in their ear. Again, they're trying to find a disease to stop Nurgle, but he keeps whispering just one more test. Just kidnap a few more subjects. You've almost got it. I know you've almost got it. And this is how the Chaos Gods can even do something that seems, opposing to their goals. In this case, he's pushing them to find a cure, but he knows because he's taking it down a darker and darker route, it's becoming more chaosy. That the focus is no longer being a good guy, and then now it's refocused to, you're a mad scientist. And as they do, at some point, the city finds out, and what I hope was a large purge takes place. This huge team, it must have been a ton of people on this whole thing, of alchemists and doctors and so on, is driven out of Excelsius. I mean, tons are dead, but many escape out into the woods, and they basically are being chased down by the Free Guild army for, acts of treason, heinous crimes against humanity and the citizens of Sigmar. Without context as to what their experiments are, it looks like they're probably worshippers of Nurgle, seeing as how there's disease and plague everywhere. And they have to foster it for the sake of testing the cures. But this group of basically nerds runs to the northern edge of the Gnarlwood, again roughly west of Excelsius, eventually entering the Rotmire swamps. This is where even Sigmar's heroes didn't go. They're like, people who go into this swamp don't come back, and they basically just leave them for dead. Forces of Excelsius go home, we've driven out the problem, let's clean this all up and keep it under wraps. Now, this is a point in almost every Chaos Warband's history where a switch gets flipped, and the people who were once healers flip to becoming these deliverers of death. Now, it's a very common story for Nurgle warbands, right? You want to help people so badly that you'll try anything and everything, motivated by this sense of self-righteousness, right? Not even just like a negative kind, but like a moral righteousness. We need to do this. It hurts the few to help the many. But in that act, many lines are beginning to be crossed, and crossed at a terrible price, people's lives by the dozens. And while you may be willing to pay that terrible price, it doesn't mean that society won't shun you. It doesn't mean other people are happy about it. Because oftentimes, how you achieve something matters just as much as what you actually accomplish itself. And keep in mind, for those of you who are history nerds like I am deeply aware of some grim chapters in human history that bear the same mark of hubris, but this is the best part of fiction, is that we can tackle these kind of hard topics in a way that's removed enough. But we saw some really good people, really smart people with no moral compass take the world around them into absolute darkness. And in this case, of course, it's whatever research group or group of scientists that were working on all these cures. Now, regardless, in this environment, these alchemists learned to survive and even thrive because they were just intuitively really connected with their environment. They understood how to harvest a lot of these things, use them for sustenance and tools. They're smart people, and they know the alchemical ingredients and that kind of properties of this environment. And this is where they became the Rotmire Creed. Their devotion switched from that of Sigmar, or some part of the good guy pantheon, to becoming a warband in the service of their deity, Lord Leech. And in their minds, they're still carrying on their research or trying to complete it because they have fully given themselves over to what we know as Nurgle. But we have to remember, they have a different perspective. Now, the reason I bring up their perspective is you have to remember leeches, again, their deity is called Lord Leech, have a long history in medicine. And I'm going to put medicine in some quotes there. History emphasis, medicine in quotes. And it makes sense as a relatable icon for a group of healers and alchemists, especially ones that have sort of that kind of medieval type of understanding of medicine. But this is a way that Nurgle can take on an aspect that they would worship. Right? They don't see the leech as this gross, terrible creature. They see it as a remedy. Something that, it might be icky, but overall it does good, and that's exactly how they see themselves. And honestly, to really see, if you kind of zoom back a little bit from what their beliefs are, to really see what chaos influence does, just put this in perspective. They went from a gaggle of nerds in the city to a tribal society based on testing these terrible biological weapons on people led by warlords and stuff. It's all necessity of being kicked out of the city and how you survive in this kind of environment. But it's just interesting to see that, remember when we used to have labs and stuff and people liked us? Now we're picking fug out of our toes just because we live in the swamp. And because of that, because they revere this deity, but also the point is scientific exploration and to help people, religion and medicine have been fused together in a really nasty way. And when they lost everything due to their lack of morality, Nurgle was right there to take society's place in their hearts and minds. They don't get you, the people you were trying to help, they don't understand you, but I, Lord Leech, do. And this is a thing that is very much pronounced in AOS, but I think less so in 40k. that the Chaos Gods are beings that are happy to be identified in different ways. A tribe can have a whole mythology about Lord Leech, bearer and healer of all diseases, and infecting the land with plague only to see it healed with rebirth of more life. And so people would walk up to them and reasonably say, okay, so you worship Nurgle. And they might say, who the heck is that? That sounds like a bad dude. No, I worship Lord Leech. He's a good guy. And this is a note, like a warband hits, that I love about AOS. And we're going to kind of slightly move into why is this cool as we come towards the end of this video. But this is a fantastic breakdown of how the Chaos Gods draw in followers. A whisper here, a nudge there. They don't need to bring a fist down and smash the lab that's creating, cures for diseases. Nurgle just needs you to do what you're doing so intensely, with such a reckless abandon, that you become the evil you were trying to stop. Lies about glory or paranoia push us mortals to act in such a way that crosses the line, and immediately once that line is crossed, they have you. And I don't even mean the idea of them getting kicked out of the city. The line was crossed when the scientists and alchemists had to start hiding their work. Because now all of a sudden we have shame and punishment involved, and you get that sunk cost fallacy where it's well, now I have to go deeper in order to find the cure, to redeem myself, to basically excuse all the terrible things that I've done. And your whole world turns to that end, and you lose yourself. You don't see yourself as being, a slave to darkness, lost to the Chaos Gods. I'm devoted to my work. I'm single-mindedly focused on helping people. But of course, if you have perspective, you understand what they've signed up for. But also, this second aspect about deities and AOS here, and I think Nurgle hits that more often, that is the idea that who you pray to may not be who you think it is. And not only that, but someone totally different may be listening in and able to answer. And so the nature of prayer is fascinating in AOS for this reason. Now, of course, we're not talking about these guys in a religious context. The Rotmire Creed has much more allusions to medicine than religion, but Nurgle blurs the two. And so here's some examples of what I mean. We talk about the story with Rotigus, the Rain Father. In this, people prayed to Sigmar for rain. He didn't answer, but Rotigus did. In the case of the Rotmire Creed, they sought justification in a false idol of Nurgle, and the Leech Lord answered. Now, of course, they're the same person. Nurgle is the Leech Lord. But it's this freedom to be multifaceted, where a cult or a tribe can adopt something so evil as deity, but they don't see it in a way that is nuts to them, right? It doesn't seem evil. It seems like a logical progression because they don't understand the context of it. And I love it. In fact, there's a whole section within the current Slaves to Darkness battle tome where it's just, they have 4 pages that depict the Chaos Gods, and then the next 4 are these random, they almost seem like minor characters, but they are an interpretation of those same gods, and any interpretation can work. These random tribes have their own names and honorifics to their deity, and have no idea who they're actually worshipping because they're only seeing an aspect. And it's really fun because we have readers, of course, we have perspective, right? The second anyone reaches out to any form of deity in Age of Sigmar, it's kind of like when Shakespeare writes 2 star-crossed lovers in Romeo and Juliet, which is basically just the first line of the story is giving away the plot. Hey, y'all, things are going to get messed up. Let's watch, right? And then we as readers get to follow along with yeah, oh, you prayed for rain. That's real cute. Let's see how this gets flipped on its head. And in the same way, you have these people, all these noble pursuits of medicine and science and advancement, and we're sitting next to Nurgle with a box of popcorn, just being like, this is going to be great. And so that's how I approach these kinds of stories. I love it. Personally, this is one of my favorites, when people try to do good so well that they become evil. So anyway, friends, that's going to be it from me. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and learning about the Rotmire Creed. I really did enjoy this story. I wish the original Warcry warbands had a page or 2 of lore like these guys do to get us kind of interested in them and their backstory, and I just like them a lot. Next, we're going to cover the Horns of Hashut, which I am excited to get into because I don't honestly know much about Hashut at all. And let me know your thoughts in the comments down below about the Rotmire Creed and what you would like me to cover next, because frankly, I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things after a very long summer, and so I need help with a little bit of inspiration for videos. So let me know what you'd like to see, and I will get right to it. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming.